All right. Well, for the sake of the recording, hello and welcome everybody, whether you're watching now or later. We're glad to have you here. I'm Kevin Root. I'm a real estate agent in Denver, Colorado, and my special guest host today is Danielle Anderson, who is a Airbnb house hacker and mortgage lender who over the years has really come to specialize in helping people understand how to get somebody else to pay off your mortgage. And so that's the very clever title behind this session here. We'll go for about 30 minutes and then maybe have a little bit of time at the end for some questions. And you can always reach out to us even if you're watching this video at a later date. By way of a little bit of context, at least for when we're talking today, affordability is a big problem for a lot of people, particularly first-time home buyers. If you remember back during COVID, the big conversation was around this appraisal gap and how rapidly the market was getting out of control with prices and how much cash people needed to bring to the table to get their offer accepted. 20 offers on a property, 2,000 showings in an opening weekend. The market was crazy and interest rates were all-time low. Well, what happened then is the interest rates started to climb and they had the fastest, most aggressive climbing of interest rates that they'd seen in decades. And so those prices stayed where they were and rates climbed. And so the problem for most home buyers now is not necessarily the cash that you need in your pocket. The problem is figuring out how to afford the monthly payment. And so there are a lot of renters today who do wish they could own a home. CNN put out this article really showing that even though on this slide here, 86% of renters would like to buy a home, they say they can't afford one. Really, oftentimes what that means for a lot of people is not that they can't afford one, but that for them to actually make that monthly payment would put them at a pretty significant discomfort for affording the rest of their life. And so as it is, even though this is just a snapshot of where things currently are, it says that 54% of people think it's unlikely they will ever be able to afford a home, which is very natural to say, I can't afford one now. And quite frankly, I don't think I'll ever be able to afford one. And so what we're going to be talking about today is not where to find your down payment cash, not where to get down payment assistance as a first-time home buyer. We're not talking about that. We're talking about on a monthly basis, how do we get somebody else to either pay all or a portion of that monthly payment. And so Danielle is a house hacker. Every crime movie, you need somebody who can break into the safe. You need the computer whiz. You need the getaway driver. All of those. For this webinar, she is our resident genius house hacker who can help us understand the math behind using part of your home for short-term rental income. So I'm going to turn things over to her, and she's going to give a little bit of her story and also break down the numbers of what this looks like in the Denver market. But even if you're watching in a different city, a lot of these principles will translate. You just need to understand and look at your local laws to see what will work and doesn't work where you live. So take it away, Danielle.
Thanks so much, Kevin. So $325,000. That is how much money I've made off of this house that I'm sitting in right now in West Wash Park, Denver since 2017. That equates to about $40,000 a year, which is about a teacher's salary after taxes are taken out of, and about $3,385 a month. So my house is not a mansion. It's just a small little bungalow. And I rent the downstairs and then I rent out my entire home when I go and travel. I am a digital nomad, or I can work from anywhere. So I do spend some months at a time, but over the course of from 2017 until now, I'd say about 80% of the time I'm home with these particular numbers. So this little Wash Park bungalow here. But then I put in this path so guests can go around to the left and then I can enter right there. So then they come in through my back gate, into my backyard, and into their own private entrance with a keypad lock, which is key. So then they would go down there and then I will close those doors when they get here. So it's private. So now it's a completely separate space. And then they have their private space down here, equipped with a couch and a little TV area, a little mini kitchenette, think hotel room. I don't even have a microwave. I just have a coffee pot, wine glasses, and a wine opener. And it's just a little 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. And that makes between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. So that's my house. That's the house that I've been house hacking since 2017. So today we're just going to cover what is house hacking, why consider house hacking, the different types of house hacks. So I primarily do short-term rentals, how to find money-making homes, and then how much you can make off of different types of house hacking. So essentially my definition of house hacking is just simply a home that you buy that you make money off of. And there's a lot of different types and a lot of different reasons why. Really, I feel like most of my clients are just trying to afford a home that they want to live in, and instead of paying rent, they want to pay themselves every month. So that's why they're want to be a house hacker. They might one of the reasons that I decided to house hack when I first moved to Denver is in the neighborhood that I live in, it's much more expensive than other parts of Denver. And so I strategically was like, well, I want a 3-bedroom house because I would like to have 2 other bedrooms occupied to help support that payment, versus if I bought a condo, that it would be all on me to support that monthly payment. And then also just avoiding the feeling of being house poor. Like I'm going for a month in Brazil next month, and I just bought a $1,500 flight, which they're freaking expensive for not even first class, and a studio apartment. And so because I literally take my personal items out of my closet into an owner's closet, open up my whole house while I'm gone, and I'm getting paid like $3,500 for the whole house in the month of September, while it literally covers my entire trip down there. So also just being able to do the vacations and drinking bottomless mimosas at brunch and like having a life because I have Airbnb guests in my basement or in my house when I'm not using it. So the different types of house hacking, one is a lock off. So that was like my video of showing how you can create, in different parts of the country, like Texas, there's not basements. In Denver, there's basements. So finding my house is just a single family house. And I found a way to just do a barn door that really separated the top from the bottom unit so that they feel safe. They've got their own entrance. And I feel safe, and it can be locked off upstairs. So it's not a complete ADU. If it was an ADU, it would be zoned differently and have to go through permitting, etc. It's literally just a door that separated the 2 units. There's also a type of house hacking called shared space or by the room rental, where that's how I started when I actually lived in Houston, Texas, and bought my first house in Washington Corridor, like near Memorial Park, and it was like a townhome, and it was a 3-bed, 3-bath townhome. There was no way to house hack that because you walked in, house hack and lock it off, because you walked into the kitchen and living room and the 3 bedrooms were upstairs. But I had 2 roommates that lived upstairs, and then I lived in the master bedroom. And so each of them paid over $1,000 a month in rent. And so, and I had it as a fully furnished rental. So it was only like, shorter stays, like 30 to 45 days. But you could do it, long-term, short-term, etc. And then on that strategy, it's kind of looking at single family houses too and being like, all right, it's only a 2-bedroom right now. Could we make it, could I add a bedroom and make it 3 bedrooms? Because that's going to help your overall profitability. And then a whole house strategy of, if you're a remote worker that travels and goes to conferences or has to go out of town and your company's paying for your trip to Vegas for the conference for 5 days, like maybe you throw your stuff in an owner's closet and just rent out your stuff while you're gone. I have clients that don't want guests in their bedroom, so they just put a keypad lock on their bedroom and bathroom, and the other 2 rooms they rent out, but they don't rent out their main one, and they don't want guests there when they're home, so they only rent it out when they're not home. So how do we find money-making homes? One, we've got to figure out the legislation. So can I do what I want to do? So we have to look at city, county, state, HOA. Like that is the most important part of house hacking or short-term rentals, is can you do what you want to do? And then the other thing is, can we find a property layout that makes sense for it? Can I find something that has 2 door frames that maybe there's not a door there now, but we add a door? And then what is the income potential? Is it by a hospital where you might have traveling nurses stay at your house, or is it close to public transportation where people coming into the area, like what is driving people to that particular area where you're wanting to buy? So here's an example of the different rules and regulations in and around the city of Denver. It is not easy to navigate, and you have to know what county you're in, what city you're in. Is there an HOA? So for example, in Denver, Denver only allows primary residence. You cannot short-term rent. Now you could do the room stay house hacking in Denver, but you'd also need a different type of license, a long-term rental license if it's over 30 days. But anything under 30 days, you have to live there. In Mountain View, you can own investment properties and have Airbnb guests or short-term rental guests. Same thing with Westminster, Wheat Ridge, Arvada, but they're all different. Like for example, in Arvada, you can only have 240-day like nightly stays, and you can only have up to 3 properties as an investor. In Wheat Ridge, there's a 2% cap, so we have to check the licensing caps. Right now, only one of their 3 districts has short-term rental licenses available. And then Parker, if you wanted to house hack in Parker, you can't, even if it's your primary residence, they don't allow it. And then some weird ones that aren't on here is like Littleton. Littleton, if you had an accessory dwelling unit, you can't short-term rent your accessory dwelling unit. So you have to be very mindful of where you're buying to do this strategy, because that is going to be the biggest detriment to your returns. If you buy in a location that doesn't allow, like they allow long-term rentals, but not short-term rentals, and short-term rentals are more profitable, then that could very much hinder your returns. So if you're not in the city of Denver, like if you're in the city of Denver, call me or Kevin and we can help navigate those for you. If you're not in the city of Denver, how do you find, what the rules are? Well, I start with Google. That's like where I start with everything, is just Googling. And what you want to Google is short-term rental ordinance, name and city and state, because that is you want to find the actual ordinance, not a news article on it, because that news article, it might have changed since then. So you want to find the actual ordinance and read through the ordinance from the city. Then I go a step further and I email and call the municipality just to make sure there's nothing coming down the pipe, right? They're not talking about new regulation changes. So I'm not, going under contract on a home that they're thinking about changing it to only primary residence, or they're changing it to, like, there's certain municipalities that you can only have short-term rental guests for 183 days or half a year, even if it is your primary residence. So, I want to make sure that they're not changing any of the rules that I read on. And then the other thing is, if your property has an HOA, make sure that the HOA allows for you to do what you want to do. Some HOAs only allow renters if it's 6 months or longer. Some HOAs don't allow renters at all, whether it's long-term or short-term. They want homeowners only living in that property. So those are super, super important to know, the HOA regulations. And then what types of homes are you looking for? Well, the type is definitely going to depend on what type of house hacking you want to do. I'm going to kind of, more, since I do more short-term rental, we're going to lean more into that and show you some examples of how I would, like, what I would look for. So this is a particular home that has no basement. So this is great for, if you're outside of Colorado, in like Florida, Texas, other areas that don't have basements. I love basements in Colorado because basements are just so separate already from the main living area. But this one, so if I'm like right here is where the front door is walking into the space. This is a door frame and this is a door frame. Through this door is a bedroom and 1 bathroom. This main house also has an exterior entrance right here and then one around the back through the kitchen. So essentially, if if you bought this home and didn't want to use your front door and only wanted to come in through the back or side door, you would leave this space and this bedroom open to short-term rental guests that just use the downstairs bedroom and bathroom, and you have keypad locks. They're never in your space, and that would be how you do a rental without a basement. This
Behind me
is an example of a walkout basement, and I'm just going to play the video because it kind of shares what Sarah does.
Okay. She lives in this little door, and then where Sarah is where her Airbnb guests go. I love this because a short-term rental can be anything. It doesn't have to be a basement that your guests are in. You can live in a walkout basement with gorgeous natural light, and it's still a freaking awesome return. So she's making over $4,000 a month. What do we say? $53,000? Yeah. So let's go see what her guests walk into.
So she made over $53,000 in 2023 living in the basement. And the reason her returns are so much higher than mine is because I have a little 1-bed, 1-bath in a basement. She's living in the basement, which is usually not the most optimal place for guests. Like they want the upstairs, and her upstairs has 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So she's making over $4,400 a month off of her rental because she's just got a bigger home in a desirable area. So these are different clients of mine and their stories. So Katie just bought a condo. She was scared to go with a higher monthly payment because obviously larger homes have are typically more expensive. And so she's like, you know what? I just want to live there and have no guests when I'm home and just rent out my house when I'm gone. She's a digital nomad. She, remote worker, can go for a few months at a time. So when she travels, she just has guests come in and pay for her, more than covers her mortgage costs when she's gone. So that's like a whole house rental example. Sarah is in Westminster, Colorado, and she's the one that lives in the basement and rents out her upstairs. So a 3-bed, 2-bath upstairs. And she bought her house for $650,000. Her mortgage is right around $4,300, but she's literally making more off of her upstairs than her mortgage is at $4,300. And then a long-term rental strategy or house hack, kind of by the room rental. Elias has a home in Lakewood, Colorado, and he earns $2,100 off of a basement suite unit with a 12-month lease, and his mortgage is not on here. Yeah, $3,600. His mortgage is $3,600. So he's living upstairs for $1,500 by having long-term tenants in his basement. This is just something Sarah texted me in July. Because in Colorado, sometimes it's seasonal. In Denver, the summer months are the biggest, money-making months. If you're in like Frisco or Breckenridge, it's actually reverse of Denver. But she made over $8,600 from her house hack in the month of July, which is incredible. So here's an example of a home for sale. This is on 575 Shoshone Street. It clearly in this picture, it's got a fridge, it's got a kitchen and a sink. So immediately as a house hacker or wannabe house hacker, like you go, oh my God, this is amazing. It's completely separate and it's got a full kitchen. As somebody that knows all the Denver regulations, this actually makes me go, this is good. But first question that we have to ask, or that you need to ask your realtor, is it permitted? Because that changes what you can do with the property. So this particular example is not permitted. So it doesn't necessarily mean like, I'm automatically out of buying this home. It just means like, am I okay if my short-term rental license gets denied doing this as a long-term rental? Because the city of Denver has 2 very different mindsets when it comes to unpermitted work on short-term rentals. So so just because it's unpermanent isn't like a no. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna, think about it. And I see we have a question. I'm gonna hold a question just till the end, if you don't mind just jotting it down. And then, so here's a quick analysis of what it looks like to house hack versus not as either first-time home buyer or a repeat buyer. So as a first-time home buyer, you could put 3% down on a home. As a repeat buyer, you can put 5% down. A lot of people think that the minimum down is 20% for any scenario, and it's much easier than you think to get into a home with like what cash you have on hand. So I just used a 5% down example, so it's relevant for both first-time home buyers or move-up buyers that want to use this strategy. So at 5% down, you would be looking at a monthly payment of about $3,700 on that unit, with a cash to close about $34,000, provided that you're bringing in all money for closing costs. That includes everything: down payment, appraisal, lender fees, title fees, home insurance up front, etc. at $3,400. So $3,700, that seems like a lot. Like, that's kind of scary for a lot of people to have a $3,700 monthly payment when they're used to paying like $2,500 in rent. So that's where, on this particular house, even if it was a long-term rental, that projection is $1,500 a month off of that accessory dwelling unit. So that brings your monthly payment to $2,200 and pretty much 50. If you use down payment assistance, that would just mean that you could have the same monthly you could have the same monthly payment. This is including the $1,500 of offset from rental income, and then your cash to close would be $18,000, which is way more doable, and that's at 5% down. If you did 3% down, that cash to close would be even lower. And what's amazing with this DPA program is if you got seller credits, which seller credits you can find in today's market, you can literally come into closing with $1,000. That is the minimum borrower contribution for the program. So how does this differ from being an investor? An investor, you have to put 15% down, and your interest rate's higher, and the cost for that interest rate is higher if you're putting 15% down. So your cash to close would be like $94,000 versus $34,000 or $18,000, which is a huge difference, which is why I love buying a house, renting and repeating versus owning a primary and buying an investment. So the average rent in Denver for a 2-bedroom apartment is $2,200. If we look at the house hacking and getting $1,500 from a basement, which I think is a very conservative estimate, you're paying about $2,200 for a house that you own. And that's not even, like, you're literally paying what you would in rent. And that's not even considering all the appreciation gains that you get by being a homeowner. So this is something called a cost of waiting analysis. So I'm looking at a 5-year comparison. On average, home prices are expected to appreciate by about 4.9%. So at 4.9%, that appreciation gain in 5 years is $145,000. Now, if we just looked at monthly payment and the cash flow difference, like, yeah, it's cheaper to rent than buy because it's a negative $102,000. So we're taking that into consideration when we're doing everything. So then on top of that, you also have costs and estimated costs to sell at about $27,000. Your closing costs when you first buy. So all of that taken into consideration, you're still up by about $40,000 after 5 years of buying versus renting. And that does not even equate to using a house hacking strategy. Like, this is not even looking at $1,500 coming from a guest in your basement or a separate room. So this is just my own look at my own house. So this is my little house here, and my Zestimate, which I know is not, completely accurate, but I did have, neighbors sell their home recently for over $700,000. So I think it's probably pretty close. I bought my house for $411,000, and that was in 2017. So from 2017 to today, it has increased significantly. A lot of people are like, well, I think the market's going to crash. And maybe, but if we look at this chart here on the right, all of the green throughout the years is all of the home price appreciation gains since like going back before 1963. There are only 8 declines in the market, and most of those happened around 2007 through 2011, which is the housing crisis. Every other year has literally gone up. So if you're buying flips, yeah, I would be nervous because flips are the riskiest thing in the business. If you're buying to hold, then historically the odds are pretty good that home prices will continue to appreciate. So since 2017, including rental income and home price appreciation, I've made over $583,000 off of this little house that I live in. That's $83,000 a year, which is more than a lot of people's salaries, or about $7,000 a month. So now that we kind of talked to you about what house hacking is, what what different ways that you can house hack, how much money you can make, especially in the Denver market. The Denver market is so great for this strategy, and one of the reasons why is because Denver is a huge draw for tourism, yet we do not have availability for short-term rentals because of Denver's short-term rental rules, and that it has to be your primary. So if you think about a family with 3 kids, it's going to be a lot harder for them to rent out a bedroom or their house when they're gone because there's toys everywhere, right? So there's not a lot of inventory of short-term rentals, which is why Denver particularly has a 77% occupancy rate, which is one of the highest occupancy rates in the country. So if you're watching this video and you want to know how to get started, if you text Now Hack or Starter Hack, or if you're already an owner of a home and you want tools and resources of how to set up your own Airbnb, you can text Owner Hack to this number, and Kevin and I will get you started on the right path of where you need to go and what you need to, steps that you can take in order to do this and start making money off of a home. So I'm just going to open this up to any questions, and yeah.